Alright, so this is going to be a video that I've been wanting to put together for a very long time. Most of you are aware by now that there is a creation versus evolution debate in this country. But what a lot of people aren't aware is that there's a creation versus evolution debate within the scientific community. Despite a lot of people say, well, there isn't, because, well, those arguing for creation have a bias. Well, look, everybody in the world has a bias. It's really stupid to say, oh, well, you can't listen to that guy because he has a bias. It's an ad hominem attack, it's irrelevant, and has nothing to do with the validity of his argument. Anyway, one of the big problems I have with creation versus evolution debate is most people haven't really heard the arguments for creation. They might have heard something through the grapevine at church, or they might have, oh, wow, in high school biology I learned about what those creationists have to say. I learned about that from evolutionists, or I learned all about that from Richard Dawkins. I know all about what creationists have to say. Look, that's ridiculous. That's like taking political party A and using only their information to learn about political party B. It doesn't make any sense. Unfortunately, that's the way people do it with the political parties in this country. So many people are just idiotic and they just vote down the line. They just vote for their political party and they don't really look into things. Anyway, my proposal is this. I suggest that everybody out there who's an evolutionist, whether you've been in science for 50 years or whether you are a layperson, I don't care. Let's have the full range of spectrum. Maybe you're going for your second biotech degree like I am. Write down your top 10 arguments for evolution. Write them down on a piece of paper. And the reason I'm saying write them down is to keep this honest. Or even post your top 10 arguments in the description box. And make these specific arguments. For example, don't just write the fossil record, because that's a pretty broad subject area. Write down something like Archaeopteryx. Write down Lucy. Write down Tiktaalik. Write down the specific evidences for evolution that you think really support the evolutionary account. Write down your top 10. And then go and see what scientists who are arguing for young Earth creation, see what PhD scientists, the people who are really experts, see what they have to say on the subject. Sure, maybe you had a bad experience in church where, like me, you had a Sunday school teacher who didn't know evolution from the back of a truck. I don't know. Maybe you've run into people who are so-called creationists who didn't know what they were talking about. I run into people who are evolutionists all the time who don't understand evolution. I get so many crazy comments on my YouTube videos where people are arguing for evolution and they don't even understand it. Like I said, I'm a biotech major. I've taken an evolutionary biology class. I've taken so many biology classes. And I've proven that I understand evolution. But I'll get these lay people on my channel, don't understand it at all. They don't even understand that evolution says we all came from one universal common ancestor. Take your top 10 arguments for evolution. Write them down on a piece of paper. Write down, oh, I've heard that human beings and chimps have 98% similarity in their DNA. Write down, oh, well, I have heard of antibiotic resistance. I heard that, oh, these bacteria gained a wonderful new ability. It's actually not what happened. And you know what? A lot of you are going to say, well, why should I investigate what creationists have to say? They're wrong. Well, I know they're wrong because the majority of scientists believe in evolution. Well, honestly, the reason the majority of scientists believe in evolution is because they've only heard one side of the debate. They might have heard of creationist arguments. People like Eugenie Scott will get on stage of the National Center for Science Education and grossly misrepresent what creationists have to say. I've only twice seen an evolutionist source that acknowledged that creationists believe that species change over time. And yet, I haven't been able to find any scientists who are creationists who deny that species change over time. Everybody acknowledges natural selection. Everybody acknowledges speciation. Everybody acknowledges that species change over time. Unfortunately, evolutionists, because their arguments are so weak, they have said, well, evolution just means that species change over time. No, it doesn't. And then they will lump this in together with the idea that all life on Earth developed from one universal common ancestor that arose in the ocean billions of years ago, or came here on an asteroid, or whatever. They'll claim that everything on Earth developed from one universal common ancestor, and this process required no outside intelligence. So lump together two completely different ideas and call them both evolution. Now that's not good science, because you're taking one word and giving it totally wild different definitions, whereas in science we need to be very specific with our words and very specific with what we mean with our definitions. This is actually a big problem with communication in science. Well, actually it's really... Sometimes there can be ambiguity in words. In science, sometimes we'll have slightly different definitions of what we mean by a species, for example. But in the case of the term evolution, it means that there's almost nothing that it doesn't mean. That's the ridiculousness about it. I'm like, this isn't even a scientific word, because it has so many different definitions, all lumped together as if they're the same thing. I'm like, this isn't even science. But anyway, so this is my challenge. Take your top 10 arguments for evolution. Just write them down on a piece of paper. Take your top 10 arguments. Whether you're a PhD scientist who's been in the field for 50 years, or whether you're a lay person, whether you're a high school biology student. High school biology students are the best. They usually haven't had their common sense so warped by becoming an adult. Write down your top 10 arguments on a piece of paper. Keeps it honest. Write them down in the description box of this YouTube video. Then go out and see what creation scientists actually have to say. And research the arguments of scientists. Pretty much stick with... I recommend organizations like Answers in Genesis. They're the people who built the Creation Museum near Cincinnati. They employ so many different scientists. Almost everybody who writes for their magazine and for their organization is a scientist. They actually have a paleontologist who's worked with them, Dr. Kurt Wise. He got his PhD in paleontology from Harvard. He studied under Stephen Jay Gould. Stephen Jay Gould, for crying out loud, he studied under him. There's other organizations out there. There's Creation Ministries International. There's the Institute for Creation Research. There's so many organizations out there with PhD scientists arguing for young Earth creation. They're arguing that life has to have been designed. They are arguing that you cannot get a single-celled organism by shooting lightning through a test tube. We've never seen any living thing come about by chance in the laboratory. We haven't seen chance chemical processes come together and coalesce and form into an organism. We've never seen that. We once constructed a chromosome piece by piece using high level of technology and high levels of intelligence. They put together an entire chromosome of a bacterium one time, and it was able to survive. Now, that was a feat of engineering, but that was engineering. That wasn't a organism coming about by natural processes. And of course, evolutionists claim that not only did an organism come about by natural processes, but this organism, this one-celled creature that lived in the ocean, was able to become all of the life we see on Earth today. So that's my challenge. Write down your top 10 arguments on a piece of paper, write them down in the comments box, and be specific. Write down things like Archaeopteryx and Lucy. I don't recommend writing down just the fossil record, because that's kind of broad, that's very general, that's kind of vague, and that's kind of an endless search. Write down your top 10 arguments, and then see what you find. I've got a creation search engine that will search websites by PhD scientists who are creationists. The only non-PhD website that I include in that search engine is my own. And the reason I include it is because I'm confident in what I say, I know what I'm talking about, and I research my facts very thoroughly. Other than greenslug.com and websites that are in my websites network, the only websites included in this search engine are those from PhD scientists. So you can search Answers in Genesis, Institute for Creation Research, creation.com. You can search all of these websites and a couple dozen others all at once. So it makes it a lot easier. Type in antibiotic resistance, type in Lucy, type in Tiktaalik, type in homology. See what you find. And you know what? Don't dismiss the results. A lot of you might be thinking, well, I can't trust what creationists have to say. Nobody said you had to trust them. That's what citation is for. If you're reading their facts on there, and you look at a particular fact and you're like, I'm really not so sure about that, that's what the citation at the bottom of the article is for. Now people say, oh, these creationists are lying. Well, give me an example of when the creationists on Answers in Genesis have lied. Oh, well, they said the earth is young and they said that life is designed. Like, that's not lying. That's their position that they're taking. Give me a place where they misrepresented the actual facts. And they can't. They'll just beg the question. They're like, well, because they deny evolution, they're misrepresenting the facts because evolution is a fact. Like, come on, people. Some common sense here. That's not there's a difference between disagreeing with the mainstream viewpoint and lying. As far as I have seen, Answers in Genesis has always been factually accurate. Go check for yourself. Go see what creation and scientists have to say. I don't know the exact quote, but C.S. Lewis said one thing to an extent at one point. He said that particularly with universities, you'll have people with one particular viewpoint and they'll kind of congregate together. And they will talk about the other viewpoint. And when they're talking about the other viewpoint, they're not talking about the best arguments the other viewpoint has, they're talking about the worst. So people don't get this rigorous debate and this rigorous intellectual challenge. All they hear about the other side is, what he put it, is kind of this castrated form of their arguments. It's not their actual arguments, they're basically straw man arguments. Or sometimes they are their actual arguments, they're just their weak arguments. So anyway, I'll include a link to the creation search engine in the description box. Thank you for taking this time to watch this video. I hope that everybody will take the time to go for the creation challenge.